What's up, everybody? Scott Callahan here with Mountaineers Now. This is episode 2 of Between the Ears. And today we're going to talk about the West Virginia depth chart. They put out their depth chart last week during Big 12 Media Days. Got some initial takes to it. Obviously, you can't really make too much of this because there's just so many things that can change between now and the time that they kick off against Pittsburgh on September 1. We haven't even had a single fall practice yet. So obviously, jobs are still for grabs. Whether it's starting jobs, second string jobs, third string jobs, just roles. There's a lot of things that are still up for grabs. So we're going to go and dive into that today, diving into our depth chart reaction. So let's go and take a look at West Virginia's initial depth chart for the 2022 season. All right, so here we go. The initial depth chart of West Virginia for the 2022 season. Like I said, a lot of this is going to change. And to be quite honest with you, I don't expect much of it to be the same in terms of the 2 deep, the 3 deep, more so on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side. I think you can kind of already tell here on the offensive side, like a lot of these names that are pegged as starters, probably going to stay as the starter. You could probably say some of that about the guys behind them. But the defense is where I think it gets really interesting. Obviously, when you lose guys like Akeem Messidor, Daryl Porter Jr., Nick Troy Fortune, Josh Chandler-Samito, and some of the other guys that they lost due to graduation of the transfer portal, like you're going to see some different, possible scenarios that come out of training, out of fall camp. So let's go and start with the offensive side. We all know that this is JT Daniels' job to lose, right? And I understand why they put all these ors in here, and people are like, how do you not name JT Daniels a starting quarterback? It's bad. It's bad for Neil Brown to do so before JT even takes a single snap in Morgantown. Like, you just can't do that. You got to have competition. And the only way to breed that is by literally saying it's an open competition. Everyone knows the deal in that quarterback room. I guarantee if you were to go into that quarterback room and you talk to Garrett Green or Will Crowder or even Nico Marchiol, like they probably have a good understanding that this is likely JT's job, but it's up for grabs. But the good thing about, well, I wouldn't say the good thing, but the thing about this competition is whoever wins that backup job is going to be that's a crucial job to have, because given JT Daniels' injury history, there's a good chance that number 2 guy is going to get a chance to really start a game this season, maybe multiple games. So winning this backup job is going to be almost like as intense as a normal starting quarterback, competition would be, because of how important that job will be. Obviously, in an ideal world, JT Daniels starts 12 games. Nico Marchiol never sees the field as a true freshman. He redshirts, and maybe you have a package here and there for Garrett Green. But an ideal world is JT Daniels, again, starts 12 games. Maybe Goose is your backup and you have Garrett Green in certain situations. Nico doesn't see the field. That's the ideal situation. We all know those things don't always work out and pan out the way you want them to. So when I look at this backup job, we saw a little bit of Garrett Green here and there last year. We got a little glimpse of Goose. I believe it was in that was it the Long Island game, and he looked okay. But we fast forward to spring ball, and I thought Goose was the better quarterback in the spring game. I thought he looked more comfortable. Thought he looked relaxed. He was poised, made a lot of really good throws. So I just think that when you look at these two quarterbacks and you look at the whole package, I think Goose is probably the guy that should win this job. Now, whether he does, I don't know. But Garrett Green's still a guy that's kind of still learning how to be a quarterback. He played baseball for all those years and all that stuff. So he still needs to understand how to read defenses, how to understand coverages, where the blitzes are coming from, and all that good stuff. So to me, I think Goose wins this backup job. I could be totally wrong on that, but we're not going to spend much more time on the quarterback situation. We've got plenty of other things to get through here. So that's the quarterbacks. Moving on to running back. Tony Mathis Jr. is going to be the guy, the bell cow for this team in 2022, replacing Letty Brown. That's a tough ask. but I think he's up for the challenge. We saw a little bit of him last year towards the end of the season against Kansas, and in the bowl game against Minnesota, had some good looks, looked good in the spring. And I think Neil Brown, Chad Scott, and the rest of that offensive staff really believe that he's going to take that step to being that number one back. Now, I will say Justin Johnson will get some carries as well. And he's a guy that Chad Scott actually said that was one of the most ready guys that he's had at running back in all of his years of coaching. So we'll see how much those carries get divvied up. I don't know if it's going to be 50-50, if it's going to be more so Tony Mathis sprinkling in a little bit of Justin Johnson. But I also wouldn't count on Jalen Anderson too. He's a guy that came in late last year and had to really kind of get back up to speed in terms of getting into game shape and stuff. So he's not listed on the depth chart right now. I think that will change, but maybe that's just a little bit of motivating, a little bit of motivating play there by Neil Brown. Now that I think about it, but moving on to the receivers, not much is going to change really from last year, right? Except for no Winston Wright, no Isaiah Estelle, no Sean Ryan, but you add junior college guys like Cortez Braham and Jeremiah Aaron, and you also get Jarrell Williams, the incoming freshman. The one guy that a lot of people started to really pay attention to this past spring was Preston Fox, and this is a guy that really, ever since he's stepped foot on campus, has really impressed the coaching staff and even his peers. But just the amount of plays that he makes, it's insane how many plays. You go back to the spring game, right, and you look at the highlights, and some of those highlight catches came from Preston Fox, the former walk-on who earned a scholarship during spring ball. So I don't know how much of a role we'll see Preston Fox play, but we saw Grayson Malashevich last year, who got a scholarship, got a little bit of playing time here and there. But I don't know if we'll see Preston Fox get maybe a kind of a similar role that Grayson Malashevich had last year, or if we're going to see him get more playing time just because of the amount of catches he has made since he's been in Morgantown and how reliable he has been. The quarterbacks love him. And that's one thing that'll help you get on the field, is that the quarterback loves you, feels trust in you, has confidence in you, you're going to see a lot of action. So we'll see if that carries over into fall camp. I think what's really going to be interesting here is the leap that we see from Caden Prather, right? I think the talent is just off the charts. You saw it a little bit last year as a freshman. He didn't get a ton of playing time, but the 6'4", 210 frame, man, that's just, he's an NFL body, right? And if he can live up to the expectations, which I have really high expectations for Caden Prather here this fall, I think he could be one of the best receivers in the Big 12 this season. I really, really do. I don't think we have to wait another year or two to see him really develop to hit his ceiling. I think if he and JT Daniels or whatever quarterback is back there can click early, then it could be a special year for Caden Prather. I'm really interested to see how quickly he starts to ascend up this depth chart, and well, obviously he's the starter, but in terms of targets and looks in the passing game. So the other guy that I think is really going to surprise some people is Jeremiah Aaron, which, again, I don't know how much he's going to get this season. He's still young. He's got multiple years of eligibility left, come from in junior college ranks. Dynamic receiver. Did it all at his junior college, was one of the leading players in all of JUCO in terms of all-purpose yardage. So he's going to be a guy that's going to be split out wide. He's going to line up inside. He's going to get some maybe some looks on kick and punt return. So love Jeremiah Aaron's potential. And then we're going to go ahead and scroll on down here because I don't want to make this too drawn out. And we're going to skip over the tight ends because I think we kind of all know what that situation is, right? If Michael Laughlin's healthy by week 1, he's going to be the starting tight end. Brian Palende, the Colorado State transfer, more of a blocking guy that they're hoping can come along as a pass catcher, but really wasn't known to be a receiving threat when he came in. We'll see what that ends up being like. They're both going to play a ton. I expect to see a lot of, two tight end packages. They're going to do a lot of different things with those two guys. So I think that's going to be something we haven't seen before, where they've got two tight ends, big body tight ends that can actually get physical in the trenches. So moving to the offensive line, Wyatt Milan flips over from right side to left side. Brandon Yates goes from left to right. I think that's a terrific move for both of them, because Wyatt Milan being left-handed, that's his more dominant hand. Same thing with Brandon Yates. And Brandon Yates is a guy they've been excited about. He just hasn't lived up to the potential. He's been so inconsistent. And I think just getting him over to that right side will take a lot of pressure off of him. I think this is going to be his sweet spot. You'll see Brandon Yates really kind of live up to not the expectations, but live up to the level that everyone expected him to be, especially at this point in his career. I think moving to the right side will do him a lot of good. And again, won't spend too much time on the offensive line just because we know what's coming back. It's going to be these five guys. James Gamitter's returning. Zach Frazier, that stalwart in the middle at center, the leader of the pack. And then you got Doug Nestor at right guard, who had some ups and downs last year in his first year with West Virginia. But I think this year you'll see probably the Doug Nestor that many were hoping to get last year. I think we'll see that this year, now that he's had that full year in the system. He went through spring ball. He's going to go through another fall camp here. So there's plenty of reps for Doug Nestor to be had. Flipping over to the defensive side. This is where things get interesting, right? Because we have no idea who's going to take that starting spot where Akeem Messidor is leaving behind. We assume it's going to be Jordan Jefferson. But is it Mike Lockhart, the Georgia Tech transfer? Eddie Vesterainen, the international kid who got some run last year? I think maybe he's got a chance. Maybe Jalen Thornton slides inside, but he's got to bulk up a little bit. There's just so many scenarios that could happen here. And Jordan Leslie, I think he's the kind of guy where I don't know directly, but I would say he's a guy that likes these situations where he likes the unknowns going into a season, and to a certain extent, you don't want to have 11 unknowns going into a season, but a couple spots here and there, it kind of creates some fun, right? You don't know who's going to be your starter, who's going to be in your two deep. You don't know what certain packages you can roll out. And it's that time of year where you get to toy and play with some things for a couple of weeks, before you head into the season. So with this defensive line, this is kind of how I see it shaking out, to be honest with you. Alston, Stills, Jefferson. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a Lockhart maybe split reps at that nose spot. I don't think Jordan Jefferson is going to be the full-fledged starter at that spot. I think you're going to see those two guys split reps throughout the games, maybe even split starts. Who knows? At defensive tackle, Jalen Thornton is a guy that they really, really, really need to come on. And Neil Brown has talked about that many, many times. This is a big year for him. This is a big fall camp for him. He has got to step up and got to show that he's ready to contribute. Because if he's not, Zyke Lawton, the Cincinnati transfer, former WVU top target from a couple of years ago, the Charleston kid, he's going to come in and get a lot of reps. And this is really, I wouldn't say this is it for Jalen Thornton, but this is really a good chance for him to step up and make his spot on this roster, because once Dante Stills leaves after this year, that spot's going to be up for grabs. And who knows, maybe he can slide into that starting role, but Zyke Lawton's sitting there as well. And Neil Brown talked at length about Zyke Lawton, how excited he was about him, because he wasn't expecting Zyke to come in and really hit the ground running. And that's what he did, just based on the fact that how quickly he was picking up things. His football IQ was through the roof, and they really didn't know that about him until they got him here. So that's going to be interesting to see how that second spot plays out at the defensive tackle position, and even at defensive end behind Taj Alston, right? We've got Sean Martin, Bluefield kid. that had a lot of high expectations coming in, and Torres Simmons, who the coaching staff has loved, but hasn't necessarily got the opportunity yet. So I think we see all three play, and all three play a significant amount of reps. I think even though you'll lose Akeem Messidor, this is probably the strongest unit on the defense. When you just look at those ones, that you look at the twos, the options that they have at the threes, from top to bottom, this is probably the strongest unit on that defense side of the ball. Bandit, Jared Bartlett, Linnell Carr, very similar to last year. You're going to see both guys play. And the or situation here is, I don't think it's more so of who's going to start. It's more so, are we going to play with one Bandit, or are we going to have two guys on the field that are at Bandit? So I think that's kind of Neil's frame of thinking there, because I think you can line up both Bartlett and Carr on the field opposite of each other at two Bandits, have two Bandits on the field. So that I wouldn't read much into. They're both going to play a bunch, probably even both split some starts here and there. Moving to linebacker, this is a position I'm really, really interested to see how it shakes out, because I don't know that West Virginia, not just Neil Brown, I don't know that West Virginia, since joining the Big 12, has had this much athleticism at linebacker. Not just at the mic, but at the will as well. I mean, Lee Koba, Tyreek Austin-Cave, Lance Dixon. I mean, these dudes are athletic. Ton of speed, great length, great size. I mean, they all have NFL type bodies. And I think that's something that Neil Brown wants this defense to build up to, get more of those big body guys. No offense to Josh Chandler-Smedo, because he played a really big factor in WVU's defense over the years, but he wasn't the biggest guy. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the fastest. You lose Josh Chandler-Smedo, a quality starter, but you replace him with Lee Koba, Tyreek Austin-Cave. Like, that's an interesting two-headed horse that you have at Mike linebacker. And I'm telling you now, like, I have seen Lee Koba play in high school when he was in Winston-Salem. The kid is insanely talented. I remember the first game I saw him play in high school, and this was, I believe, his senior year, first game of the season. Can't remember who they were playing, but the dude rushed for 200 yards in 4 touchdowns at running back. And in the same game had 4 sacks and 10 tackles. Like, he wasn't even their number one running back. But by the end of the first quarter, they were up by so much. They threw him in at running back just to have a little fun, see what he could do. And he ended up running for 200 yards. So he can do it all. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch. He's a big dude. He doesn't even have to really grow into his body. I don't think there's much more growing into his body. Once you see him on the field, he's really going to stand out to you, just how big he is, how fast he is. And I think probably a lot of you saw that during the spring game. So there shouldn't be too much of a surprise there, but he's got an NFL body. He's got NFL potential. Tyreek Austin-Cave, a guy that they recruited out of high school, picked Miami, didn't really see much playing time there, comes to West Virginia in a spot where I think he's better suited. And I think we'll have probably more of a path to playing time here in Morgantown. Going to the cornerbacks room, this is probably where things start to get a little uncertain, because you lose 2 starters, but you bring back Charles Woods, who was, by Pro Football Focus, was one of the best coverage corners in all of college football last year. So Neil Brown has a pretty good feeling about what you're going to get out of Charles Woods. It's just that other spot. Is it going to be Andrew Wilson-Lamp? Is it going to be Colorado State transfer Rashad Ajayi? Is it going to be James Madison transfer, Wesley McCormick? Or is it going to be Tyler Junior College transfer, Jalen Shelton? Like, there's a lot of possibilities that can go into play here. Andrew Wilson-Lamp here at number one, I would say is interesting if it was like 2 to 3 weeks into fall camp and this was still the case. But again, Wesley McCormick being the number two hasn't taken a snap in Morgantown in practice. Haven't seen Rashad Ajayi taking a snap in Morgantown at practice. So it's not surprising to see Andrew Wilson-Lamp listed as the number one as of right now. And that very well may be the case when we get to the backyard brawl. He's a guy they're high on. He's got a lot of length, very, very, very fast, maybe the fastest guy in that cornerback room. So there's a lot to like about it, about the kid. But when you look at Rashad Ajayi, I think he has like 35 career starts. Wesley McCormick's got, upwards of 20, possibly 30 starts. Can't remember off the top of my head. Two very experienced corners, albeit at a lower level, but they have college starting experience. I think that's going to play a factor when these battles really start getting underway. So I don't know what we'll see transpire here. I would expect probably Ajayi to be that other starting cornerback, and then McCormick and Shelton battling for that backup spot. One of them, Andrew Wilson-Lamp, will see playing time as well. This is kind of a big year for Wilson-Lamp to really sit back, learn, develop while playing. Last year was just really sit back and learning. Now he's getting to do a little bit of both. 2023, I think, will be the year, and it's almost got to be, really, when you look at the situation. Ajayi will be gone, McCormick will be gone, Woods will be gone. So he's got to be able to step up into a starting role next year. This is a big year for him to sit, learn, and play at the same time. So we'll see how that all unfolds. At the spear, this is one position that Neil and Jordan Leslie have wanted to get more athletic at, more faster at, be a little bit more hybrid at. And I think you're seeing that with moving Davis Mallinger to spear. You see Jasir Cox, the North Dakota State transfer, who can play a little bit of linebacker. And then you have Naeem Muhammad as well. So there's almost a mixed bag of what these guys are and their traits, their makeup. So whether or not they go toward more of a Davis Mallinger type who's more fast than anything else, or a guy that's a little bit bigger bodied like Jasir Cox, who can play a little bit of linebacker, I don't know. I think this is kind of like not a trial and error, but just kind of a year to kind of play with it, because you have two guys that fit into this position perfectly. They're just two different body types. So we're going to see both of those guys play a lot. I would expect Davis Mallinger probably stays in the starting lineup, and Jasir Cox may, again, that's hard because Jasir Cox was so good at North Dakota State. So maybe we see Jasir Cox. You know what? Now that I'm talking myself out of it, Jasir Cox should start, but Davis Mallinger is going to get a ton of playing time and should. So who knows? Maybe we'll see Jasir Cox line up at will. I think that's the good thing about him, is there's some positional flexibility, is that if one of those linebackers goes down, he can slide down and play a will. Don't know if he's quite big enough to play the Mike, but hey, we've seen smaller linebackers play the Mike in this defense before. So moving to the last part here of the defense, the safeties, Aubrey Burks, Hershey McLaurin at free safety, and at a cat, you got Marcus Floyd and Malachi Ruffin. Depth is an issue here at safety. But again, positional flexibility with Davis Mallinger and Jasir Cox. Both those guys can slide back and play either free or cat. And I think that's something that not only Jordan Leslie wants to do, but Dante Wright and all those other secondary guys that are coaching up the secondary, they want to kind of cross-train these guys so that way they can play multiple spots. You're not pegging a guy into one spot and saying, this is where you're going to play. If you can have a guy that can play spear, cat, and free, and maybe even will or a corner, that's going to help your defense so much. And I think when you look at these guys like Davis Mallinger, he's going to be able to play spear, cat, and free. Jasir Cox can play spear, cat, free, and potentially will. You look at Aubrey Burks and Hershey McLaurin, they can play both free and cat, maybe even spear if they wanted to. Probably more so Aubrey Burks being able to play spear than McLaurin, but still, there's a possibility. Marcus Floyd has played corner or did play corner at Murray State. He's going to come in and play cat safety, but he could also play free or spear. So that's what you want to have in your defense, as much positional flexibility as possible. And since Neal Brown's got here in Morgantown, I think this is probably the most versatile defense he's had from front to back. You know, you look at those guys in the defensive line, Stills can kick inside, you know. Taj Alston can kick inside on certain situations if needed. Jordan Jefferson can bounce out to defensive end if needed. You look at the linebackers, we talked about them, and then obviously we just went into a whole big thing about the secondary. So having this amount of flexibility and versatility is going to do a lot of good for this West Virginia defense, who's going to be replacing a lot of big pieces from last year's defense that graduated or entered the transfer portal. Neal Brown said this could be the best defense they field, or that they have fielded in his 4 years. I can't disagree. You know, I want to find a way to contradict that, but it's really, really hard to sit here and say, man, this defense, there's no way that they're going to be better than they were that 2020 season when they were at the top of the country. But again, that was in a shortened season. So I think if you spread that out over 12 games, it looks a little bit different. I just think the depth is there. I think the experience in the two deep is a little bit better. And the athleticism, more importantly, is certainly the best they've had in 4 years. So very interested to see how this turns out. And again, we're going to come back and talk this depth chart out a ton throughout fall camp, leading up into that first game against Pitt, September 1. And obviously, I don't want to leave out the special teams guys here. We'll show them a little love as I'm talking. You know, you got Casey Legg and the Florida State transfer, Parker Grothaus, battling for the kicking spot, Oliver Straw, the Aussie. And then you can see the rest of the stuff there. They're players too. We're going to give them some recognition. But that's going to do it for the depth chart reactions, the initial depth chart reactions. Again, we're going to get more in depth into this as fall camp gets underway, as Chris, my co-publisher, Chris Hall, is on site taking in these practices. He's going to be feeding me information. So we're going to get more in depth with this, and we're going to put together our actual depth chart projections probably about midway through fall camp. And we'll have you guys, I'll have you guys watch me put it together. How about that? Instead of just me reading through it, maybe we'll go through and I'll talk it out to myself and you can see me and how I think. I think that'll be interesting. So that's what we'll do here in a couple of weeks. This Friday, we will potentially have Zach Campbell or Cody Moyer on. I'm trying to figure that out. Both of them are contributors to the site. They do a lot of behind the scenes stuff. They were writers for us a while back. They do more behind the scenes stuff for us now. I'm going to try and get one of those two guys on with me for Friday's show. We're going to talk the Big 12 preseason poll, not just the one that the media let out, but also my preseason Big 12 poll, which you can see here on Mountaineers Now. If you just go to this little football tab, actually, you might just be able to go right here. And I think it might be actually one of the ones that's pinned. Yeah, right here. Skylar Callen's preseason Big 12 preseason Big 12 power rankings. You can go ahead and take a look at it. But if you want to just wait to see what I have to say about it till Friday, that's okay too. So that's going to do it for this show. We'll see you here on Friday on the Between the Ears show here on Mountaineers Now, part of the Sports Illustrated Fan Nation Network.